she's more than just a businesswoman, but she is a woman with a purpose and on a mission. Margo Fargo. Do you think then that the reason why people jump onto it is purely for the sake that it's a trend?
There are people making a great impact, but sustainability has so much red tape, ironically, because you can't really say that you are an eco-warrior if you're driving a car that's not electric. I think it's a little bit of a crutch, but I also understand that, once again, I'll always bring it back to myself. It starts with the individual. I don't say I can change the world, but I can also make an impact and apply that pressure. I'll be part of a national modeling agency.
Right.
And I'll be the managing director for that.
National modeling agency.
Yes.
Welcome to it, the podcast where we ignite your vision and we keep your light burning bright. You plugged in with us on EXC-i8. So today in studio, we've got the honor and the privilege of having an inspiring model and entrepreneur. And as the founder of Grinda Coffee and Fargo Straws, she's more than just a businesswoman, but she is a woman with a purpose and on a mission. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, Margo Fargo. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Margo, thank you for being here. And, before we dive into all the wonderful accomplishments and achievements that you've had in, I must say, it's been a young career, but it seems like you've done so much.
Yeah, I feel old at the same time, but I feel like I haven't even started. So,
so on that note, talk to us about your childhood. Like, what was your upbringing like?
Sure. I grew up in a very colorful family.
Right.
Very big, very, if I say flamboyant, it's because there's just so many different personalities.
Right.
I grew up in Bloem, so I'm a Free State girl.
Okay.
Grew up with my mom and my dad. I lost my dad at the age of 13, so basically got raised by a single mother from the age of 13. Grew up very shy. Grew up quite in my shell,
right.
I'd say. So sometimes I always laugh when I think where I am and how I grew up, because I was the girl who would say nothing in the classroom, just get straight A's, go home, play sports. It just so happens that I'm good at sports, and then I disappear into the abyss. Yes.
Okay, cool.
So I wouldn't change anything about my childhood. I think it sort of shaped me into who I've become today.
Right.
Went to a co-ed school in primary, and then I went to an all-girls school, which was a bit of a shocker for me, because I didn't understand how there's so many girls and there's so much estrogen, because I grew up as a tomboy. I grew up quite rough, because I always wanted to compete with the boys, and I always wanted to show that I'm smarter than the boys, I'm faster than them. So,
and then here was the switch going to an all-girls school.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It really was. It was a bit of a shocker, because it was quite a good school. It was a prominent school. It was a Model C school, and I grew up in the hood, like a colored neighborhood.
Yeah.
I went to a very good school, but it was like predominantly, let's say, blacks and coloreds. And for the first time, I was just so nervous, because you get people dropped off by drivers, and they get 100 Rand for lunch. And I'm like, geez, I'm only getting like 5 Rand if I'm lucky. And I wouldn't want to eat my lunch. I it opened up my mind, actually, being in an all-girls school. So I think that shaped me into seeing that the world is actually much bigger.
For sure.
Yeah, it's not just my hood. There's people are going to Europe.
Yeah.
People are going. Yeah. All I knew was going to East London. And people, it's not the east of London. It's East London. But yeah, I think it was a good childhood. Varsity, went to the University of the Free State.
Yes.
Still stayed at home. So most of my life I've been home, and then transitioned into like the biggest city a couple of years ago.
Incredible. And I think, for me already, I'm not sitting here listening to you as a host, but I'm really just enjoying everything that you're saying because I can relate to a lot of that stuff so much.
Yeah.
Also, primary school, I went to, a public school, co-ed school, and then high school made the transition to an all-boys school, and similar upbringing. So I'm literally seeing myself like in your story, and I'm seeing the kids in the tuck line, and people with their big Chelsea buns and their toasted cheese
and
sandwich.
donuts and things, and you rock up with your polony.
Like, do they even know what polony is?
Yeah, bologna and cheese, and it's like you're so embarrassed to take out your lunch, and it's like you have to eat it because you don't have tuck shop money.
Oh man, incredible! So yeah, man, it seems like your family was quite is a close knit unit.
Yeah.
And then again, sorry to hear you mentioned the loss of your father at a young age.
That's okay.
How did that impact your childhood or?
Sure. It was. My dad was actually my best friend.
Right.
His loss. It was a sort of a sudden loss. So there was no preparation. It's not that he was quite sick or there was a journey and we had to prepare ourselves. But I would say it actually made us as a family stronger, because I think when there's a single parent and you were dependent on both parents, you realize you actually need to grow up a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So you realize mom is the only one who's working. She's sent like four of her kids to school. Some of them are already in varsity. Some have moved out of the house. And I think it taught me independence because I got a lot of validation from my dad.
Right.
He was the reason I performed. He was the reason I had to do well in school, because he was like my biggest sort of critic.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the stay-at-home dad. My mom was always working.
Okay.
So he was the entrepreneur. He was the one who was flexible. He was the present dad. He'd go to the races. He'd go to prize giving. He'd sit down with us and do homework. He would be cooking when my mom's working night duty, because my mom is still a nurse. So she'd work like crazy hours, come back. Yeah. When she's asleep, we're awake, we're going to school. So there were times in my late teenage years where I was a little bit bitter because of the loss of my dad.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I'm just like, you never really know. We know that you don't know when you're going to be okay. You don't know when you're not going to be okay. You are reminded that life is temporary, and the fact that we're only here for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think with my mom, we had to support her. So I think that made me realize that I have to be more than just good. I have to be extraordinary. If somebody's aiming for 10 points, I need to aim for 15 at least, so that I can stand out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think until this day, I obviously still miss him. And I think about a lot of things, especially with the business side of things. I'm like, what would my dad say? Or how would he advise me?
Yes.
Or if he was still around, would I even have taken this career path? Because I maybe would have probably gone into corporate or stay in corporate or work in a lab or in a science lab or something like that, because that was always an aspiration of his.
Yeah.
So it impacted me in a positive and a negative way. But I think, nobody can fathom the pain of losing a parent or even a loved one. But I think it just had to happen that way at the end of the day. Yeah.
And then in a lot of ways, like you said, it kind of shaped the woman that you are today. Being an entrepreneur, you got to be strong-minded, and you got to have a certain amount of independence and fearlessness, which you mentioned, having the loss of your father and your mom raising four of you, that sort of, it fell on you, right?
Yeah.
And you started adapting. Because you also mentioned that you were shy.
I was. I think I still am a little bit.
Right.
I think I'm introverted naturally, but I love being around people, good energy. So it takes a little bit of time to sort of get me out of my shell.
Okay.
Naturally. So the natural thing for me to do is I won't be the loudest in the room.
Right.
I won't be the most chattiest, but if I've trained myself in a way that I can withhold a conversation, I can speak to anyone, even if they 10 times more smarter than me, I know that I can have the conversation.
Yeah.
And this actually was through pageantry, That's how I got
Right.
to gain my confidence. I always got the worst marks when it was like mondelings and orals, etc.
Right.
I was not that girl that would shine with like speeches and things like that.
Okay.
I hated it. I would run away from it.
Okay.
So the irony of it all is when
Yeah.
my childhood friends see me like on television, they're like, "Who is this girl?"
That's not the
It's
Margo
not
we-
the Margo we grew
Yeah.
up with. But I think it was God's plan at the end of the day, because I know I'm a firm believer that most of the time your weaknesses are turned around and it's opportunity for you to work on them and for it to become your strength. So it also goes to show that you can evolve as a person and a human being
Absolutely.
day by day and work on yourself, because I had to work on my craft. I had to
Right.
work on speaking in front of people, and it started with 5 people, 10, turned into
Okay.
20, 25, etc. So I sometimes laugh when I find myself on set and I'm like, how, this is not me.
Yeah.
But it's also a testimony to how you can evolve and how your story needs to be told, whether it's from a beauty perspective, whether it's the girl from the hood that was the underdog and is now seen as successful and shining. But yeah, the shyness is still there, but it creeps up here and there. But
You like it's well managed. Let's put it
yes,
that way.
definitely, very well managed.
And so, do you think, like, without the pageantry in your childhood, would it be something that you would be able to teach yourself? I'm just thinking about other young girls who might,
Yeah.
have similar personality traits or upbringings to you, and might be, in a shell a bit, but they look to somebody like you and feel inspired and want to achieve the things that you've done, but maybe they're not involved in a pageant.
Yeah.
Do you think it's something that they can train or learn
Definitely.
how to do?
Definitely. Pageantry actually was meant to break me down, if
Okay.
I could say that. That's how I saw it. I was a late bloomer. I didn't do pageants at like 13, 14.
All right.
I was mistaken half of the time for a boy.
Okay. Okay.
So I think I was a late bloomer when it came to that. And the reason why I did that is because a friend of mine dared me
Yeah.
to say, look, everyone is saying you're tall, you're this, you're that. You should consider pageantry. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, because then you just part of the whole stereotype, and you don't want that. I want to be a scientist. I want to go work for a big brand, and I want to go do product development. And she's like, I'm gonna dare you so that you do it and see if you like it or not.
Okay.
So I accepted the dare.
Yeah.
And it ended up changing my life.
Yeah.
It changed my entire career path, because I realized just having like a little sash on you, people actually listen to you.
They listen.
And it's like the superpower where you go into your community and you go speak at schools, and they're actually like, wow, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I remember my first speech at a school, I was so scared. I was shaking, because I was like, what am I going to say to these young girls?
Yeah.
And I realized this is what I need to work on. So I actively forced myself into public spaces so that I have that, like, the comfort of speaking in front of people.
Okay.
So to answer your question, definitely it does take a lot of time, but there's no 10-step process of gaining confidence. It needs to start internally, because that's the journey that I walked.
Right.
And you speak to people, you have someone who can help you with that. Someone to sort of groom you into how you say and answer certain questions, because not everyone's meant to be a public speaker.
Yes.
But you can actually improve on it bit by bit by actively putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
100%. I
Yeah.
agree, and very well answered. And I'm struggling to wrap my head around people mistaking you for a
I
boy.
promise you.
But I mean, at some point they might have been like, "Hey, but this is a really pretty boy." They're like,
I promise you, I think I turned around 16.
"Yeah,
And I'm like, actually, I don't look that bad. And I was like, okay, then there was Miss Valentine at school, and people like, you should enter. I'm like, why? So maybe it's because I hit puberty and my hair, I started looking after myself. I started wearing dresses because it was an all-girls school.
Right.
But half of the time, barefoot, in shorts, my hair would always be messy. I'm always falling or racing the kids, and my knees are still today so battered because of all the things, all the adventures that I went on, climbing trees, and I liked it. I didn't want to be the girly girl at the end of the day. My first Barbie, I remember I threw the Barbie on the roof because I didn't understand why my dad bought me a Barbie instead of a car, not a car.
Okay.
like a little toy
Yeah,
car. And
yeah.
he's like, no, you need to go play with the other kids. And I'm like, I don't want this Barbie. So yeah, I think with everything in my life, I think I've been a bit of a late bloomer.
Okay.
And whether it be moving out of the house, whether it be realizing a lot of things that I'd like to pursue in my career. So I think maybe it's dramatic that I was mistaken for a boy, but I wasn't the prettiest. Let's just put it that way.
So then you also mentioned your marks in school.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got a BSc, and was that from the University of the Free State?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
cool. And before the pageantry then, I think you also mentioned that, okay, you had sort of a vision of what you wanted to achieve, academically, and modeling wasn't that.
Yeah.
Right? At what point do you see like the synergy between modeling and your academic smarts?
Sure. Good question. When I realized I was being invited while studying, because my first big pageant, I'd say, was Miss Free State, which is obviously back home.
Right.
And I would be invited to all these big corporates and lunches, and I would sit there and I'm like, but I don't just want to smile and be a representative of the brand. I actually want to have a conversation with the CEO or the CMO of the company to understand, after my degree, how can I incorporate whatever I studied from an internship to understanding what it is that my degree is doing. Because to be honest, the reason why I also went into pursuing my honors is because I didn't understand what I'm going to be doing with my degree.
Right.
I said it's so vast, it's so it's complex, but at the same time, I don't want to be working retail. I just want something different.
Yeah.
And I realized pageantry and the beauty industry was actually a key to enter a room and have a conversation and actually withhold that conversation so that it can turn into a possible business opportunity.
Yes.
Or an opportunity to work further with the people you're engaging with, instead of just smiling and having a nice time and getting free things, etc. So I always wanted it to be more, because the biggest part of me was just to change the status quo of what people represent and women represent in the beauty industry. So just obviously the cliche that you hear, she's not just beauty, she's brains, but actually putting it into action.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if ever there was an example of somebody who's doing that, it is you.
Thank you.
So when you entered Miss SA in 2018, did you enter it with a perspective like, okay, you're going to try and use this as sort of a springboard? You mentioned that you noticed that, having a sash around you, it sort of gives you a superpower and a voice and people listen.
Yeah.
Was that a driving factor, or was it just a competition you wanted to, enter and try and win?
Sure. Miss SA is a bit of it's such a different journey, and people always laugh because it's not the most common question. Because when you enter, you want to win.
Right.
But I went with the intention of wanting to win in the beginning.
Okay.
And I had a mentor at the time, Casper Bosman. He's a designer.
Say your vest.
Not your vest. Not that Casper. And I remember I was working for him at the time in around 2017. I had just quit my job as a medical sales rep. And I went to him and I said to him, I really would like an opportunity at your studio. I want to learn, and I also want to enter Miss SA. And he rolled his eyes and he's like, trust me, you don't want to enter Miss SA.
Okay.
And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a girl from a community that I want to uplift. I want to be an inspiration. Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, you're giving me all the answers that a person would say because they want to be in the top 12. And you're not going to be in the top 12
like
if you give...
Typical pageant.
Yeah, it's a typical... You're not even there, but you're already giving... Why do you want to enter? So I told him, I really just want to prove to myself that I can actually be on a national stage. That was my intention. And at the time, I had this little afro, my natural hair, and I'm like, I really want to be the girl with the afro on stage in a ball gown. Whether I win or not, that's up to God. And he gave me all the bad and the good of entering something like Miss South Africa. Yeah. So he told me, you're gonna be judged all the time. It's sometimes half of the time not fair. He told me, everyone's gonna have opinions about you, etc., etc. And as I went into the competition, I progressed. I went to, it was top 25, I think, progressed to top 12. I'm like, actually, I really like this, and I'm okay with not winning.
Right.
Because I want to win by evolving within the pageantry space and have greater influence. That's the reason why I entered Miss SA. But the closer we got to the competition, I'm like, I actually want to win this thing. Because who wouldn't want to be the queen? Who wouldn't want to get R1 million to set them up for life? And I realized, okay, actually, I do want to win, but I prayed about it, and I said, you know what, whether it's in God's plan or God's purpose, whether I win or not, I know I am meant to be here. And I got to top 12. It was great, had the time of my life. I think I cried for 2 days straight, not because I didn't win, but because I realized I actually did it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because half of the time my family would say, you're wasting your time, or my friends would say, this thing doesn't make money. Are you sure you want to do this? Yeah. So I had to go with deciding, is this what I know God wants for me, or am I listening to what people are saying? I'm not entering because I'm considered beautiful or pretty to society. Actually, I was the exact opposite. So it was a personal challenge for me to enter Miss SA, and that changed the direction once again, and involved the direction of me pursuing entrepreneurship, me pursuing my businesses, because that's where I got into knowing that I have the capacity to start my own business. So that gave me the tools and gave me all the, how can I say, confidence to ask the right questions and ask the people around me to assist me to, grow in that career space.
That's amazing. And I think you naturally answered the question that I was going to ask next, because, hearing that you were, and knowing that you were a top 12 finalist and not winning, in some instances that can be a setback for somebody, right?
Definitely.
But it seems like in your case it was the opposite. It was a catalyst.
It definitely was the most, I always say, God is a way of using me to be the most unconventional person to do certain things. So after Miss South Africa, every person comes and says, you should have won, you are our winner, and plays with your mind, because you think about it. And then there's a little bit of bitterness that sometimes creeps up, but you constantly have to kill that bug, like that whisper in your ear that says, you should have, it could have been you, etc. But you realize your path is different.
Sure.
And 2 weeks later, I received a call from the Miss Earth South Africa organization. Okay. Where with Miss Earth and Miss South Africa, Miss Earth is more of a program versus Miss South Africa. It's a competition, it's a pageant. When you're done, you're done. And I had the opportunity to represent the country for Miss Earth, and I did Miss Earth in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So 4 years later, because I was always planting trees in communities and I helped them over the years, because they didn't have a representative, I had the opportunity to represent our country at Miss Earth globally. Very and cool. I was like, perhaps this was my path.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't meant to, and maybe I was meant to be the testimony of, you don't have to have a crown to actually be that queen.
Absolutely.
And I'll forever cherish that part of my journey, because that's where where Fargo Straws was birthed, because I was inspired by the travels in the Philippines and how they lived sustainably, and how they just decided that we out with the plastic straws, we're out with the paper straws, we'd like to do stainless steel straws. And I came back and I was like, I want to do this. Because when I came home, I'm like, okay, there's the beauty side of it, but I want to hop onto entrepreneurship. I want to do something different that has not been done. And it was definitely a catalyst.
Awesome. So you're also, quite clearly an advocate for sustainability. What is it about that made you so passionate about it? Was it influenced by your upbringing and the community, or what's the story behind your passion for sustainability?
Honestly, I never know how to answer that question, because I grew up in a community that fairly good community, but was always full of like your litter and the guys, we call them, I don't know what you call them here, but in Afrikaans or it's slang, I don't even know what language it is. We call them asmabatlas. And they would never pick up the trash. And I would always think to myself, we do these cleanups, people dump trash. There's not enough trees in my community. I'd love to plant trees. So I'd always see it as an opportunity to do such things.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, I'm supposed to be the opposite of what I'm advocating for. But because I saw there was a need, and naturally, I know my mom would always say, I'd always be fascinated by plants, and I would always be fascinated by nature. Instead of wanting to go out to play, I'd want to go climb trees. So I think it was something that was actually innate or built in me, but I pursued it because of what I loved in school.
Yeah.
What I was exposed to in school when I would go to certain parks and we would go to tours. Like, I want to do this. I want to pursue this. And the fact that everyone says, look after your planet, hug trees, that's not why I did it. I'm not a purist when it comes to environmental work, but it comes from a point of respect as well. In terms of how do we respect the Mother Nature?
Yeah.
How do we do that? I mean, I'm not every weekend out planting trees and picking up litter.
Right.
But my principle was on the day-to-day experiences, the day-to-day interactions that you have, what impact can I make?
Yeah.
And me not knowing what to do after my degree was a blessing in disguise, because that's where I completed my thesis in consumer behavior and sustainability.
Yeah.
And that sparked up the psychology of how consumers make certain decisions. Are they making the decision? Are they purchasing that because it's actually beneficial for the environment, or is it beneficial for them?
Right.
And I just saw a gap. I just thought, there's the beauty industry, there's the business side of things, and the sustainability. No one is actually focusing on the sustainability factor.
Okay.
And now it's the buzzword at the moment.
Yes.
Everyone's talking about sustainability, but are we actually being sustainable at the core of it all? And that's the question that I always ask myself when I enter a room or I'm having a conversation with a brand or a company. Are they actually being sustainable, or do they want to be seen as sustainable?
Right.
So there's a lot of work that can be done around sustainability. And I always say, I always want to do more around sustainability, and I don't do enough yet. I want to do more.
Right. You mentioned something that I find quite intriguing, right? And that was with, are these companies, are these brands actually practicing and being sustainable, right? Do you think then that the reason why people jump onto it is purely for the sake that it's a trend and it can make them sort of, part of the conversation?
I must be very careful how I answer this question. I'd say yes and no, but let's go with yes. I think it's all about the perception, especially big companies. I mean, there are a lot of targets that have been set out. I think by 2030, a lot of companies have made the commitment to be carbon neutral, to go plastic free, to go paper free.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that it's a whole lot of mumbo jumbo at the end of the day.
Right.
But there are people doing incredible work as individuals and organizations and NGOs that are really being intentional, because we can't do without plastic. When we say we imagine a plastic-free world, it's impossible. It's basically water, sun, and plastic. Right now, we are too dependent on it. But there are better alternatives that one can go, into. Instead of going paper-free, you obviously go. If you go paper-free, you can go digital. If you want to go plastic-free, you go for a better plastic that is biodegradable. But there are a lot of people that just think to themselves, for example, beauty brands, individuals, there are people making a great impact, but at the end of the day, sustainability has so much red tape, ironically, because you can't really say that you are an eco warrior if you're driving a car that's not electric. For example, I don't have an electric car. The only reason why I don't have is because I can't afford it yet.
It's coming.
Yeah, I can't afford an electric car yet, but I think it's just about measuring the expectations of saying, when you're an advocate for sustainability, anyone can be an advocate for sustainability in the day-to-day choices that they make.
Yes.
Day by day.
Oh, very good. And very well answered. So with your consciousness towards sustainability and the efforts that you're making, is that at the core of the decisions that you make when you decide to launch a new business, or does it vary depending on what it is that you want to do?
I try my best to make it at the core of it all. I can't imagine myself making decisions, even if, when I have conversations, and I have very good soundboards in my life, where if there's something that falls onto my table and my inboxes that can give me a whole lot of cash, but it's not on brand for me, or it doesn't align with my values, I wouldn't necessarily take it. But it would be difficult because you're an entrepreneur. It's a great opportunity, but it doesn't align with what you are trying to advocate for. So I do my best to work alongside people who have similar values and who I can also challenge at the end of the day to be more sustainable in their practices, whether it be in the fashion space, whether it be with who I'm working with, whether it's a strategy, whether it's in marketing. I try my best for it to be sustainable, in business. I mean, I still have a lot to learn about the business world, the entrepreneurship space, but for example, with my coffee brand, I try my best to have sustainable packaging, recyclable packaging, having local roasters, and trying to sort of close the loop, because I don't want to be a hypocrite at the end of the day, where online I'm a sustainability advocate, but I'm not actually living it on a day-to-day, basis. So
how are you doing this? You're always answering my next question, because I wanted to ask about the Grinda coffee specifically, because I get the concept with Fargo straws and the role that plays with sustainability. So I was curious, was sustainability sort of in the back of your mind when you were bringing out Grinda coffee, and how are you going to sort of continue to support that initiative?
So with Grinda coffee, I always call it my abandoned baby at the moment.
I'll show you.
Because I would definitely love to do so much more. And the reason why I started the coffee company was not because I wanted to serve good coffee, which it is good coffee, by the way.
Yes.
I'm being biased. But I want to rather create an entire new ecosystem of how we as South Africans see the coffee industry, and how females, specifically women of color, do not necessarily have the skills to, number one, start their own business, and also have barista training skills, know how to roast. And because it's currently in its startup phase, I obviously plan to want to expand and make it more sustainable when it comes to the sourcing of the beans. For example, I source directly from Uganda, a local Ugandan bean, because we, as South Africa, unfortunately, we don't produce good coffee beans because of the climate. And I have one local roaster. I make sure that when he roasts the batch, that it's being roasted with a bigger batch, because mine is very small scale. Okay. And then when it comes to like the end goal for Grinda coffee, I want to export African beans to the rest of the world. So that's the main goal of why I started Grinda coffee. Right. And hopefully, should I open up a coffee shop very soon, it will also have sustainable practices.
That it's so well thought out, and it's almost like everything you do, there's an intentional purpose behind it. So it's more than just business, or I'm a huge coffee fan and I want to make the best coffee in South Africa. There's real purpose and intent, and that is very admirable.
Thank you. Thank you. And coffee connects people also at the end of the day. A conversation will always start with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, a cup of something. Yeah. And also the main goal is to build community. Yeah. Grinda Coffee does do a lot of pop-ups and, brings people together. We have we have the opportunity to work with different companies, etc. But the conversation starts off with the coffee. Yes. And then that's where people connect. That's where people can network together. Yeah. So that's at the crux of it.
Look, there's so many layers to Margo Fargo. I mean, we know about the modeling career. We are hearing and learning more about the entrepreneurship side and the sustainability. But there's also your passion for women empowerment. Could you speak to us more about that? Any initiatives you're currently involved with?
So at the moment, I had this community a few years ago called Crown Me Naturally. Right. And that was also after Miss South Africa, where I just wanted a group of women, 20, nothing more,
Okay.
come together and talk about the struggles that they have with, number one, identity, feeling seen in communities and the workspace, and specifically how they translate or how they see themselves with natural hair in the corporate space.
Yeah.
Because I remember I would walk into an office with my afro and people would say, did you brush? Is your hair done? And I think that for me was the biggest thing. I'm like, how many more women have to go through this?
Yeah.
And now it's being more accepted. It's more comfortable. It's people are warming up to the how can I say, the view or the idea of women wearing their hair out in the corporate space.
Yes.
And this community has been built over the past couple of years where we can start conversations around natural hair care brands, but then at the end of the day, you walk away with getting to know someone a little bit better. You get to understand and you have a sense of belonging when it comes to not only the natural hair space, but also expanding your network as women as a whole, where women can come together and chat about what it is that they do, what are their struggles in the business world, what do they struggle with in terms of their physical appearances. So just having a safe space where these conversations can be had. So that's why I ended up calling it Crown Me Naturally, because it has a double meaning, because you don't need a physical crown to feel any form of validation. You can be your natural self at the end of the day.
Okay, awesome. There's something that I noticed and going through your Instagram feed, and you always seem to be surrounding yourself with people that it seems like you care about, family, friends, and all the busyness, right, in your life. How do you maintain those relationships? Like, does it get to a point where you got to schedule time in with family, or do you have a natural fit to see everybody that you care about?
It's difficult, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think some of my friends we end up scheduling so many things well in advance. For example, there's a friend I spoke to yesterday and we said, I'll see you in April on this specific day, because that requires intentionality. I am a bit of I love working and keeping busy, so I have to prioritize time with family, and I think it's important. There needs to be a balance, because those are the people who make you feel grounded beyond like all the noise and all of the hustle and the bustle of the big city. I always make sure that I speak to my mom every single day. If I don't, it's because maybe I had I went to work late, or I just ended up being, seeing the time and she's probably asleep. But there's an intention behind it, because there needs to be a balance, because some of my friends are not in my industry, so they don't understand why can't you answer your phone for 5 hours straight because you're on a set, or why can't I just come to your house to come and have a chill session and like let's chat like we used to. So there's a level of balance and intentionality that always needs to take place, and then you have good friends in the industry who understand.
Right.
You're busy, I'm busy, we'll see each other when the time comes. But it's so important to have those people who can ground you, number one, and also where you can just be. I always say, when you go through social media, you see the idea of the person. You don't really see the person at their core. So it's so important to go back home and speak to the people who actually see you for who you are, and beyond all the titles and all of the fanciness and all the places you go to. And there are people in the industry who also see that, who are also good friends and who also understand the journey that one walks, and to always be compared, always be judged for something is difficult and it's exhausting. So scheduling those things are so important, because they give you energy and they give you the grace to start again and show up the next day. An honorable shout out to your mom, by the way, who's a hero that should be celebrated. Thank you.
So with all of that, and I know it's difficult to maintain, so have there been any relationships that have suffered as a result of the work, or have you managed to navigate through those challenging times and come out victorious at the end?
Funny, I think I've they've required a lot of work and groundwork, and I think whoever is in your life and doesn't understand what it is that you do or the busyness that you have, some people translate it or take it as you don't have time for me. I've been blessed enough to have people in my life that actually they don't necessarily fully understand, but they get it, where they say, no, we get it, we can see you in a month's time or 2 months' time. But there are a few that have suffered, and hopefully one can recover some ground when it comes to that, right. Especially with friendships. But I'm also a firm believer you can't not grow and evolve as a person. Not at your core, you don't change at your core, but growing and understanding that this is the space that I'm in. It doesn't mean I'm changing as an individual, but I just need to find myself in these spaces a little bit more. So it's I'd say one or two, not too many.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to hear then. And what about then on the love interest side of things? Have there been, is there currently a situation where you're seeing someone? Has there been, or is there just no time?
So I'm seeing my varsity sweetheart.
Okay.
So we've been together we've even lost count. We've been seeing each other for about 6 years now, if not 7.
Okay.
And I think that's one of my anchors.
Right.
He's in engineering. He's the furthest away from the space that I'm in.
Yes.
So you can imagine that it takes a lot of checking in, and it takes a lot of understanding. But the beautiful thing is that he's walked this journey with me. He's seen me before all the titles, before all the accolades and all the shoots and things like that. But I remember when we started dating, I said, I'm not going to live a normal life. I just remember telling him that. And I think I was 23 or something. I don't even remember, 26, 25.
Yeah.
And I said, if you can keep up with me in terms of how fast-paced I want to go, and then great. If I can keep up with you, we'll see each other. We'll walk this parallel path.
Yes.
You have a destiny and a calling on your life. I have too. If we can check in with each other and be each other's partners and companions, then great. So it's been a dance. It's not always easy, but we make it work. Yeah, we make it work.
Does it also take a lot of work to then keep sort of the relationship, I want to say, out of the limelight? Because I guess we see it mostly in the States. You know, once a relationship is in the media's focus and there's a lot of attention on it, it causes additional strain.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I get asked a lot, you don't post, you don't share. Are you even in a relationship? And I said, the people who know me and are part of my circle will know exactly who it is and who I'm dating. And I think there's a difference between being secretive and private.
Right.
And I believe privacy is power, because we're always posting and because I'm always at different places. This is the one sort of pocket of my life that I decided I would like to keep private. Yeah. And it's worked. It's worked for the past couple of years, and it has its pros and cons as well, because you think to yourself, there are days where I just want to post the guy, and I'm just like, but it's the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, you don't want to open that door, and
because then it exposes him to my world, and I don't want that, because I need to respect his privacy. Sure. And funny enough, I'm the one who wants to post him, not him, because his guy friends always say, why don't you post your goal? Why don't you do this? And I'm like, no, if we're chilling at a bar and we talk and people share photos and things, that's great. But it's worked for us at the end of the day. And if we do decide to do it publicly, which I don't think it would be ideal, but I think it's been a blessing, because we get to live in our own bubble. Sure. There are no opinions, there are no voices. People usually have an idea or an opinion of who you need to date, and who you're going to look good with, and you should be dating this person because he's also in the industry, etc. And you just laugh and nod, because you're just like, oh, okay, okay. So I think the privacy part has really been it's been a dance, but it's worked for us
for sure. For sure. So there's a couple of nuggets you've thrown in there for anybody listening carefully. So stuff like, keeping certain things of your life private, and then checking in with, people in your close circles, like your mother you talk to daily.
Yeah.
I would imagine that those are sort of, key practices in maintaining a healthy balance between, your work life and your personal life. Are there any other practices that you have? Are there any rituals or meditation or something that you incorporate into maintaining a healthy balance?
I'm a Christian, so my anchor is God,
Yeah.
and I believe that he's the reason why I've ended up where I am. He's the reason why I am who I am. I think it takes so much grace for anyone to show up every single day. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. I remember I didn't like it when my dad would wake us up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to church, and we'd cry and we wouldn't understand why. Yeah. And growing up, you realize when you start actually having a relationship with your creator, and you realize that there's so much grace that's needed. And my mom is always on her knees. I always say like 10 o'clock. She prays. I know you don't call her between 10 and 11 because she's busy praying, and that's it. I would say I meditate or go do yoga. I don't do all of that.
Yeah.
I'll go work out. I'll go to the gym if I'm stressed. But my anchor's God at the end of the day. And I also believe that's how I could get out of my shell.
Yes.
Because when I gave my life to Christ, I became a new creation, and I knew that the platform that has been given to me is not because of for me. It's for me to be a testimony that it can be done.
Yeah.
Like the underdog, the unconventional girl who was overlooked guy can actually make it by the grace of God. So that's my anchor.
Yeah, God's grace is sufficient for you. And for anybody else listening, wondering how they can get through it, it happens. Yeah. We've got a testimony in studio here with us of that. And is there a particular verse that you have that's like a favorite or something that helps you, that you can always turn back to when you really need that motivation and that
so
push?
So many. I think is it Psalm? Sure, there's too many to mention.
Yeah.
But I think it's delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart.
Right.
I think that's Psalm 37 verse 4, if I'm not mistaken. And that scripture actually just sums up everything of what I desire in life, whether it be peace, whether it be dreams, whether it be anything that I want in terms of aspiring to be. When you delight yourself in the Lord and you put your anchor and you go back to Him, He will give you the desires of your heart. Yeah. And that scripture's evolved over the years, because when I was young, I'm like, oh God, if I pray for anything, I'll get it because it's what I desire. Yeah. Because it's like earthly things. And I actually realized, no, the older I got or into my journey with Christ, delighting in Him just means that you are putting your full trust in Him, and He gives you those desires. He gives you the desires of your heart, not the desires of your mind. Like the things that you are pondering on, and you say, God, I want this. And every single thing that you desire in you, that is purposed in your heart, that He has placed in, will be filled and
that
will be fulfilled.
Beautiful. And I love that you explained the evolution of that, because I mean a lot of people fall into the trap, and it's not the fault of the people going to church, but rather the people who are entrusted to teach the word to the people, right? And you put scriptures into their minds, and you start sort of using God like a genie, right? So, and that verse of yours is a good example of how people can misinterpret that and say, okay, but you know what, every day I sing praises, I'm delighting myself in you, but you're not giving me the car that I want, or things like that. So I love that you broke it down, and you said that, and as you build that relationship with God, and you truly, commit yourself to Him, or delight yourself in His ways, His wisdom, and you understand His purpose for you, and you walk with Him like that, He will put His desires that He wants for you in your heart. And once you are aligned with Him, then those desires are fulfilled. Absolutely. So I really love the way that you broke that down.
Thank you.
There are so many brands that you have worked with and collaborated with. Are there any in particular that stand out and that have made a lasting impression, or a campaign where you go like, wow, that was really cool. Like, I wish we could do more of that.
Sure. I think I'll stay away from the beauty brands and retail brands, but I've been fortunate enough to work with a couple of designers. But
Okay.
from a sustainability perspective, I don't think we are ready as of yet to partner, basically.
Right.
I know I've been privileged enough to work with Polo South Africa. I know they launched and rolled out a very big sustainability campaign in terms of how they sourced their mohair. And they documented that journey from supporting a farmer in the Western Cape and how
Okay.
that was generated into the stores, and how they created an X amount of garments so that it's considered sustainable. Not a lot of water was used in producing those specific garments. And I think the campaign did very well. But from a community perspective and a sustainability perspective, I had the opportunity to work with the Cotton On Foundation.
Okay.
And their strategy was actually quite brilliant, because a lot of people are so focused on planting trees and going into communities and making sure that communities have shade. But their strategy was more, or is rather, about reforestation. So actually preserving the current fauna and flora that we have, and eliminating all the alien plants in parts of the Kruger National Park. So I had the opportunity to travel with them for 2 days.
Yeah.
And we went up and we could see that how they sort of chop down the alien trees, and then that also goes into a One Tree Planted fund globally. So that was quite lovely. And school projects that they've done also in KZN, I've had the privilege of visiting them and seeing how they do that. And their sustainability model of vegetable gardens, and also educating the young kids on sustainability and how to look after, the water as a source and as a whole. So the fact that they do that, and they're such a big retail company, and they're vocal about their sustainability practices, is quite admirable.
Yeah, yeah. See, earlier you mentioned that there's a lot of small groups and NGOs, NPOs, people out there that are doing the good work and actively promoting sustainability, but maybe on a bigger scale with bigger corporates and brands, it's not being practiced. It leaves me thinking, like, from your perspective and your opinion, do you think that we have evolved enough in South Africa when it comes to sustainability, or do we still have some ways to go?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because I don't know everything.
Right.
But in my opinion, I think we've definitely progressed in terms of the messaging around sustainability. Okay. I think there is a bit of pressure when it comes to, when the whole world is headed into a certain direction, that means that we also need to follow.
Yes.
But I still think in that same breath, so much more work can be done. Instead of doing the handouts, or instead of saying we are sustainable, we actually need to be held accountable as a big corporate company, where they can actually be audited in terms of, I know there's a term called carbon credits,
right,
where you can actually gain like a good carbon credit because of your sustainable practices in the company. So you actually do have companies who do that, but I don't think it's compulsory for all corporates. I stand corrected.
Okay.
But I think from a CSI perspective, and also from a day-to-day operations perspective, the entire strategy, I think, needs to change, whether it be the hospitality space.
Yeah.
When you go into a hotel, they do say, save water, please leave the towels, etc. But that's from an educational perspective. But the entire infrastructure of our country, I believe, needs to, be re-evaluated from a sustainability perspective. But also bearing in mind, we're a third world country, but I still think that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a crutch, but I also understand that, once again, I'll always bring it back to myself. It starts with the individual. I don't say I can change the world, but I can also make an impact and apply that pressure.
Absolutely.
In the rooms that I find myself in. So.
Oh, definitely. And look, there's so much good stuff you've given here, and I'm sure people will draw a lot from it, and they'll take what they need. But do you have any advice for any young professional or young woman, that might want to follow in these steps, whether it be a career in in modeling, or maybe just, you know, a similar path to you? You know, how can I use the skills that I have, the opportunities presented to me to create a better, more sustainable future? What sort of advice would you give?
Oh, I never know how to answer this question. But what has worked for me is knocking on all the doors. With the closed ones, the ones that are locked, you knock, and to not doubt the vision and the dream that you have for your life.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you're not going to get the rejections. I think my second name can be rejection at this point in time.
Oh, really?
Because I reflected recently when I was on set.
That is so interesting.
And I went through my emails when I started applying to these big fancy agencies. And I had 6 rejection emails.
Wow.
Where some were quite harsh, some were quite, consider this, or consider when you are much older, or when you've matured, or you're not the right look for us. And I was like, wow, I'm on set for a campaign that I've always wanted to do, and the very same people who rejected me, I get to work with.
Oh, wow.
And
That's come full
I don't
circle.
think they remember.
Yeah.
But that's my advice, to ask questions, to not take no as a final answer.
Yeah.
The no is like the next opportunity. I always see it as that. So maybe it was a timing thing, or maybe you weren't ready, because 6-7 years ago, I don't think I was ready for the industry. Actually, even longer, 10 years ago, when I was so hungry to be part of this industry, and I just got these rejections and rejections. I think it was a timing thing. And I think I just had to learn a lot and mature in that sense. So timing is also important, and be patient with yourself.
Right.
You don't want everything all at once. It's a natural thing to do, but there's time.
So it's so important that you spoke about that process of knocking on doors.
Yeah.
You know, and I've knocked on a lot of doors. I'm sure there's people listening and watching that have knocked on doors, and it does get hard to really, you know, deal with that rejection. Can easily fall into the trap of, you know, just not having the motivation to get up and try again. I think a lot of times people then they give up too soon. And what is remarkable is that if somebody had to go through, just look at where your life is at the moment, you know, they can easily make the mistake of going, oh man, things must be so effortless if only I had, you know, her beauty, or, you know, the campaigns love her. But to hear the story that, you know, the rejection is there and everybody has to go through it, it's very encouraging.
Thank you. Yeah, I think also there's power in your story and your testimony. If people look at me and see she's made it or she's got it all, I'd be failing. But every time I get an opportunity to share that, it's never perfect. Nothing was handed on a silver platter, or I wasn't given a silver spoon.
Right.
I didn't grow up with privilege. But it's just about having that endurance and tenacity to keep going and keep showing up no matter what. No,
that's great. You deserve whatever good has been happening and still to come. Really salt of the earth kind of person, and a godsend, like, to endure what you have and to have the come up. It's a true story of a role model. So I hope you know that.
Thank you.
And then what is there for us to look forward to in the near future for Margo Fargo?
Sure. There are a few daunting and exciting things on the horizon.
Right.
I'm finding myself being in this industry for just over 10 years, and making a conscious decision to start making an impact behind the scenes, let's say. There's a lot of things that I've picked up in the industry that I would personally like to hopefully change and transform and make a difference. As a model, and as an artist, an entrepreneur, I've seen a lot of things and a lot of gaps in the industry, but I've also seen a lot of opportunities. So agency related, hopefully I get to come back and share more details on that.
Welcome back anytime.
But yeah, I'll be part of a national modeling agency.
Right.
And I'll be the managing director for that.
National Modeling Agency.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to guess where this is going to. Okay.
Yeah, so that's such a breakthrough in my career, because that's where I actually want to now start making an impact in the industry for males and females, South Africans, and giving them opportunities to jet off to the rest of the world, and also make an impact in the fashion industry as well.
Ooh, we love that. We love to hear news like that. She is more than just an advocate for sustainability, but also every brand's dream, and it has been a dream to have her in studio here with us today. Margo, thank you so much for your time out of your super busy schedule. It has been such an honor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so nice. It was exciting because it helped me also reflect from where I come from and where I am, and also where I'm going. So thank you.
Awesome. And I'm glad you used the word exciting. It's the perfect roundup to our show and the name, Excite Podcast. So to everybody listening, to everybody watching, we hope that you have been as blessed as we have been in studio. And remember to keep it locked in here with us on the podcast that ignites your vision and keeps your light burning bright. That's us, EXC-i8. Margo.
Awesome. Thank you, Terrence. Yo.
Superb.
That was amazing.
Superb. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. That is a wrap.